Comments and opinions expressed on Writers in Focus are those of the individual participants and are presented for the purpose of discussion only. No endorsements by Atlanta Fulton Public Library System or Fulton County government are intended, and none should be presumed. Hi, welcome to Writers in Focus. I'm your host, James Taylor, and today I'm delighted to have as my guest an old friend named Patric Boles. May I call you Patric?
Absolutely.
Patric, welcome to the Atlanta Fulton Public Library and the Fulton County Government Center. By way of introduction, Patric is the author of this wonderful children's book that I have in front of me. It's called The Legend of Eben and Heidi Dolphin. Patric has been a commercial corporate airline pilot, a sea captain, and you remain vitally concerned with the degradation of the marine environment, the oceans to the kids, right? The seas.
Absolutely.
He's written his first children's book to address these concerns and, to me, introduce an entire young generation of children to marine ecology. On a personal note, I've known Patric for many a decade, and I love to say this because when I first came to Atlanta, there was really nothing going on in the literary scene. I'm talking 30, 35 years ago. There was one shining knight of literature in Atlanta, among a few others, and that was your father, bless his soul, Paul Darcy Boles. It turns out that Paul Darcy Boles was born in the same year that my father was born, 1916. Oh. My father remains alive. Your father passed away in May of 1984.
That's right.
But in those days, your father was he was Atlanta literature in many ways.
He was.
Do you mind if I just get that off my chest?
No, absolutely no. I'm very proud of him.
Okay, in those days, very few writers were living in Atlanta. Your father was writing for Playboy magazine, Cosmopolitan magazine, Redbook magazine, McCall's, Saturday Evening Post. He was being reviewed in the New York Times. In fact, I learned all this from the New York Times obituary in 1984. Your father wrote short stories, essays. He was a literateur of the first degree. And here you are. I can't believe it. After all these years, it's good to have this Boles blood writing a book.
Thank you.
I had to get that off my chest.
No.
Listen, Patric, I rarely invite authors on the show who write children's books because I don't know a lot about children's books, and you always take a chance. Oh my God, is it a kid's book? Is it kids quality? Is it just another wonderful, wonderful book? The Legend of Eben and Heidi Dolphin by Patric Boles, illustrated by Wendrick. Beautiful photograph. They are almost like photographs. Well, beautiful illustrations. Mm-hmm. Tell me about this book. It's about time you said something.
Sure. Well, the book goes back to times when I used to tell stories to my children.
Okay.
My grandchildren just love to hear stories, just like they be read to as well. And so this was one of the characters that I had made up for them and stories that we were telling, and just decided that they received it so well, and it gave me teachable moments for them for the ecology and marine environment, so that I decided, well, let's go ahead and try and publish one. Because I've done some other writing as well and never worked around trying to get something published. And what was it in education? It's a lot different than it was than my dad's day when he had an agent and he sent it off, manuscript off to Macmillan, and they would either buy it or reject it, and they buy it and they do all the marketing, the production and everything. Now it's almost 180 degrees back the other way.
But even in those days, Patric, publishing and marketing a children's book was still incredibly difficult. It's counterintuitive. As a librarian, you figure, I figured that children's books, there are adult books, takes a certain amount of effort and talent. Children's books doesn't require as much. Just the opposite. Children's books require almost more talent and marketing to get it into the hands of the prospective audience. Was that your experience?
Absolutely. It's much more expensive to get published, for one thing.
Yeah.
You're doing 4-color, CMYK color printing and on offset printing, and it's just much more difficult and much more process than printing just a standard, text novel or something like that, where the only thing you have to be concerned about it from a design standpoint is the cover. and which is your marketing. And the cover is very important to any marketing type of process with the books. And I think you've seen a lot of novels, I'm sure, that you didn't even know, but the cover caught you.
Oh, sure.
Okay? And then you
sure.
read the back page or the end flaps, and it kind of sucks you on into the story. And that was our idea from the marketing standpoint. We wanted good, colorful illustrations, and we also wanted these characters. Rick and Wendy did a wonderful thing for me. Pulled these characters out of my head, because I said, I want you to draw what I can see, because I'm not an artist. And they were able to do that because we wanted the characters to really be based in reality. You can tell that's a dolphin, okay? It's not just a caricature, it's a character. Right. And these two characters will continue on throughout the rest of the series of the book, which is, the second one is already written. It's being illustrated now. It should be released sometime in the summer. It takes a little while to do these illustrations, and there are 28 in this one, and it was quite a period of time to get them done and get them down to the quality and then get them print ready. These illustrations were actually done by airbrush on a canvas, and then that canvas was photographed and made digital files made available to it up to 600 DPI, which is dots per inch, which makes the much more detailed ability to print. So this was an education for me, getting all that together through graphics people and working with other people to get the exact files down to get to the printer so he can give us the product that we wanted.
Well, I'm kind of curious, because typically a children's author sometimes doesn't even meet the illustrator. It's the publisher who or the agent who puts the illustrator in touch with the actual writer. What came first? I'm really curious about the production of this book.
No, that's true.
You had the idea of two dolphins, and
I wrote the story.
Okay.
And then I sent it off to some of the online e-publishing,
like
and
Lulu,
Eloquent Books, Ex Libris.
I know them all.
Those types of sites. And I actually ended up taking a contract with one of them, and I won't mention which one, but we had a contract, and they were going to get the illustrators together for it. Well, their illustrators it wasn't even close to what I had in my mind.
Right.
So I backed off from that. I said, I'll get my own illustrators, and I did. I talked Rick and Wendy into doing it after they read the story, and it took a long process to do, but then we finally got the illustrations finished, went back to my contract, and they were going to go ahead and produce the book. They couldn't even do that. The files they sent back, they'd enhanced the reds and the blues, or they played with the colors way too much, and we wanted them the way the paintings had looked. So we decided to go ahead and take care of the entire project myself, and I said, I'll go ahead and I'll get it printed. I'll start my own publishing company.
I've heard that story so many times, but go ahead.
And that's what we did. I formed a publishing company, and we actually contracted with a printer up in the Midwest to print these books. They're all printed in the United States. They're all done on biodegradable soy inks. It's a very, it's a United States product all the way, which, we were happy to do too, because I was looking at competing with these books that are printed in China they'll print this book in China for 50 cents. But the quality is not anywhere near what this is too as well. So we decided to go ahead and follow that route, and it took a long period of time to do it, and we finally, I just received and got the first run of printing, and the books are all in the distribution network now. They'll be available on Amazon by the end of the week.
Excellent.
And Barnes & Noble and all the rest, all the major booksellers by the end of the month.
And we'll probably put this up on our broadcast, but you can buy this book from www.dolphinlegend.com.
That is correct.
And listen, I cheat a lot as a librarian. Just Google Patric Boles, PATRICBOLES, and you'll find this. And you'll find this book. But listen, we're on the same wavelength. About 2 years ago, I had this crazy idea of I'm going to teach a course in publishing because everything is changing in America and around the world. And I would have between 10 and 20 people every 2 weeks for almost a year and a half, and every week I learned something new. It changes so often. Did this happen to you where someone I don't want to mention a name like Lulu, I don't want to mention Ex Libris or anything like that, but they will, like the spider and the fly, they'll draw you into their web and say, we'll do this for free, we'll do this for free. And near the end of the process, they'll say, we'll do the copyright for $100. We'll do the ISBN number for $80. You need editing, we'll do that for $300. And then you realize, I've been suckered.
Oh, yeah.
Same thing happened to you?
Absolutely, and not only that, they
And
don't,
not to disparage these
no,
these
but they
companies,
don't, they're not true publishers. They don't really offset print and get behind a product and do it.
but they sell themselves that way.
Yes, but what they actually offer is on-demand printing.
Publishing on demand.
Right. So you call it, you want this book, and this book right there in their program was going to sell for $34.95.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I said, well, who's going to buy?
Right,
I'm not going
right.
to buy that book for this. Just
Right.
too much money. So in order to get the price point down, I took care of. That's what I said. We negotiated our own publishing and our own printing, and so we're able to get the price point, much lower. This is $13.95,
Yeah.
which is very much in line with the majority of the children's books
Sure,
that are in
sure.
the same size and quality. So it was a whole different type of thing, trying to figure out how to get through and get this to the finished product then. But Lulu and Ex Libris and Eloquent are
Bless them all. Yeah.
bless them all, are great
Yeah.
actually they're really good for print books and
Yes.
for e-publishing. This doesn't lend itself to e-publishing because not every child's going to have an iPad or an electronic reader or these type of things. And besides that, most children love to hold a book. And I love to hold a book.
Yes,
And I love
yes.
to hold the book for my kids. And they fall asleep with it, no matter whose book it is. And this is, it's real. It's just something that is not in the ether or the cyber out there and stuff. This is real. You can hold it, touch it.
You're making my job as an interviewer very, very easy. Because I told you about this publishing workshop that I held, and I would always tell the folks there, ask yourself why you want to be published. Do you want to make money? That's the wrong thing to do. Do you want to show the world that you have the talent to write? You might want to do that. But there's a way of publishing that will be commensurate with what you want to do. Publishing on demand, it might be good if you want a cookbook for Hanukkah or Halloween or Christmas. But a children's book, you chose self-publishing. But self-publishing I'm talking too much, is not the same thing as we used to call vanity publishing.
Right.
You want to talk about that for a minute, or no? I'll get you. Let me.
Sure.
You're very, very good. Why did you want? What were your intentions in this book?
To be able to get the story out.
And I want you to talk about the kids.
And to be able to have a product that my kids could actually
There you go.
see and
That's what I'm
touch.
trying to get at.
Okay,
Right.
that they could do. I mean, the stories are wonderful. I've been verbalizing them for as long as they've been around, and we'll continue to do that. I've got more characters that we made up, and they're all favorites for them as well. But as far as my goals were, I said, well, this has got a message in it too. It's also entertaining and educational. It's a love story. It's a fantasy love story about two dolphins. They're magic. Okay, he knows how to fly. He can do wonderful things. She's very proactive in the environment and the ecology of the oceans. And so they make a wonderful pair, and so they've decided, they meet in this first novel, and they decide to pair up, and they're going to continue on with their adventures and their challenges for environmental awareness for the rest of the series.
Yeah. Actually, I've got this image of myself, Patrick, of you and your grandchildren. This on your website. There, you're on the beach, the wonderful blue water, and I can see you reading this book. I've read this book several times, many times, and it's just designed to be read to kids, isn't it?
Yes.
It's very nice.
It's a very easy read to kids, and they relate to it. And even the youngest grandchild, who's 2, I'll read the story to her, but then just in the one that I had, the soft cover book that I printed up myself, just hand drawn and things, she could look at the pictures and know the story, because each one of the illustrations is right next to the part of the text that describes that particular illustration. So you can just get the story repeated to you just by seeing the illustrations.
Now, in children's literature, there are books and essays written about this, like, what is your audience? Are they like pre-K? Are they 2 to 3, 4 to 5? What is the audience for this book?
2 to 9.
2 to 9.
2 to 9, because there's still enough of advanced vocabulary in there that it's good for teaching right on up through 8 or 9 years old. So my 6-year-old granddaughter can read some of it. She doesn't read that well yet, but she can read this book. So
Okay, I know the audience is going, so what is the story about? What's the story about? What are these? What is it with the Eben and Heidi Lou?
Well, Heidi Lou
It's about time we talked about that.
Sure. Heidi Lou is a wonderful, free-spirited dolphin who loves to just travel and roam and explore and think things. She's very curious. And she's out one day swimming, and she sees one of these large factory fishing vessels.
Yeah.
You know, these things are huge. They indiscriminately fish. They set out huge nets, and they take every single thing in them. And a lot of them in certain waters are not protected by the laws that we have here in the U.S., and so they don't have things that exclude dolphins. They don't have things that exclude turtles. They take every single species of fish there is only to harvest, say, the tuna that's coming out of it, and they throw everything else just back into the ocean dead. And so Heidi sees one of these, and she says, well, you know what? I'm going to stop this guy. And she figures she's going to dive down and she's going to grab the cable that's hooking onto the seine, and she's going to wrap it around the rudder and cause the boat to stop or break, basically, so they can't set their nets. Well, things don't go quite wrong, and she gets caught in the net. And so she's there, and she's going to drown. She's a mammal. She needs to breathe air. And so she'll drown just like you and I would if we were kept under the water. Well, Eben hears her cries, and Eben is this magical dolphin. He's gold, and he's got blue eyes, and he's just a real special dolphin. He comes racing over there, and he bites through the cable and rescues her. He takes us by her side and flies her away, and they fly off to a wonderful little bay somewhere, a little tropical lagoon, where they decide they're going to partner up and pledge themselves to each other to bring awareness to man about the perils that face the ocean and what we can do to clean the ocean up and to conserve it and take care of it. Right now we've lost so much of our coral reefs even because of the increase in the temperature. The reefs just aren't, 90% of the Caribbean reefs are dead. 1/2 of the Great Barrier Reef in Australia is dead. It's brown now. These are places that I've dived before. And wonderfully alive, great places for the birth of life, and that's what part of the food chain begins right there. And so the effect has been pretty devastating. And there are several other things that we'll address too in the future books. We'll be addressing pollution spills, oil spills in transportation. We'll be addressing the horrible trash pollution in the oceans, the plastic bottles are one of the things. There are actual artificial islands that are floating in the middle of the ocean out there, 2 and 3 miles across, that are just bottles that are just all have gotten hooked together in these little currents. So it's mainly to bring awareness to all of that, but also to let the children enjoy the fun of the story too, with a magical dolphin that can fly and go places and things. And these were part of my childhood. I know that a lot of the characters in the books that I read were fantastic, and there was a lot of fantasy in it.
You must excuse me, Patrick. Let me take the opportunity to ask you what it was like being the son of the distinguished author Paul Darcy Boles. In all those years, I've never asked you that, but your father was the biggest big shot in Atlanta in the 50s and 60s.
He was marvelous.
Yeah,
It actually was marvelous.
The writer, Atlanta, Paul Darcy Boles.
He was, and if writing was taught by osmosis,
Right.
I would be the best, because I grew. You know, my godfather was Bill Deal. You know, we had all of the Terry Kays and Ann Siddons and Pat Conroys were all the people who hung around.
Pat Conroy.
Well, Pat's actually, we're exactly the same age.
Okay.
We're 5 days apart on our birthday. But they were there, and there were poets and artists and people that I grew up around. So it was a very magical experience for me, and plus artists and writers, they accept children, and you're part of there, and they'll talk to you as an adult when they can, or as a child when they need to, and it was a wonderful experience. It was one that. It was a tough one from a financial standpoint. Sure. Writers don't make a lot of money, so we had feast or famine. You know, Dad would sell a book or a short story to Saturday Evening Post, and we have money that week and then gone the next. So it was an interesting but fun thing, and there was a lot of passion. My dad was a passionate guy. There was a lot of energy and around the house. So, and my mom the same way. Mom was she was as much part of that team as anybody. And,
Go ahead.
Yeah, and in the period of time that right there in the 60s, you know, he was dealing also with his good friend Ralph McGill and his
no kidding.
And Dad's 4th book, which is called Deadline, and it was about the situation, the issue with integration and segregation. And he was having
those were forgive me, but I'm still an interloper in the South. You're a son of the South, but your father was a courageous man. I mean, when McGill and other white people took a stand and said, I believe in integration, that meant that they were an open target.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I mean, this, literally.
We got bomb threats.
Okay.
I was certainly accosted more than once in high
There's a
school.
whole generation that forgets that, it seems.
Yes, it was. It was a very turbulent time.
Yeah.
But it was a very brave thing. This is 1956. This is another 8 years before the Civil Rights Law was signed. So it was a very courageous thing to do at that time. But he was passionate about that, and we learned a lot about human rights and the rights of all of us on this planet. And it was so that was I wouldn't trade it for anything. I think it was a great basis for me anyway. Now, whether I'm able ever to develop even close to the skill level that he had, I wouldn't even pretend to. He was incredibly prolific.
Listen, I appreciate you telling me about your dad. I'd like to get back to self-publishing.
Certainly.
Is it Ecor or Acor Publishing?
Acor.
How did Acor Publishing come about? That is your imprint.
That's right.
That's Patric Boles Publishing Company. Tell me how you created this.
Well, printers won't just print.
Oh, yeah.
You have to have a publishing company.
Okay.
So I said, well, I've got to get a publishing company together.
Yeah.
So Acor is Latin for deep ocean. Okay?
I figured that.
So it went into the marine type theme.
Yeah.
I actually have, since I've started that, I've had a pretty good bit of interest from some of my friends who are writers too, or other people who are in the writing, about how'd you do that? How'd you get it published? Especially people who are trying to do children's books.
I want the secret. Okay.
Yeah.
But you did it.
It's not a secret. It's sweat.
Okay.
You know, there's a lot of work, there's a lot of leg work, there's a lot of going back and forth, and you can settle for less all the way along the way. Okay?
I like the way you said that.
And but we just weren't about to do that. We had to find out, okay, how we were going to get. But I had to learn so many things about this, like what they call the wrap here, and this piece of end paper that's glued down over that. So any type of mistake you have to make sure this covers completely. There was just a lot of physical things that I needed to learn too. But now I've got education. As we know, education all requires tuition, and the first one was a little expensive.
Sure. But let me ask you this: in your father's day, this would be, you would turn in a manuscript to the publisher would turn it into the printer, blah blah blah. Does this book exist on a flash drive? In other words, you give this to somebody and they just take it from there?
Yes. When you finally get it down, you get it down to a set of files that are digital files that meet all of the requirements and the layout requirements that they have, because there are trims pages on things, there are certain bleed areas that they call, and so all of this has to be taken into consideration and done properly. We actually used a design program, an Adobe design program called InDesign.
I'm impressed.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that's what we used to create the print files. I took the actual illustrations to a professional media people, and they professionally digitally photographed them from above, so it was exactly flat and perfect. You know, you don't get any angles or light thing. We're really happy about how that came out, and so then from there it was from converting those digital images now to the proper print files.
So what's harder, being a sea captain, a commercial corporate jet pilot, or a children's author?
Let me jump back for a minute. I've never flown a jet in my life.
But you were a commercial pilot.
Right. I was a commercial pilot and not an airline. Okay, I flew for corporations.
Okay.
I had a small airplane business myself in Tennessee for a period of time. That we actually flew for Union Carbide and for TVA and for a lot of the businesses around there, and did flight training as well. We did the flight training for the Air Force ROTC, for the DEA, and a lot of the government agencies there. So it was a business as much as anything else that allowed me to fly every single day. And I flew a lot through the Caribbean, through Central and South America. We had a lot of clients who went there and all over the U.S. and Canada. So I got to see a lot of the country on somebody else's nickel, basically. So it was wonderful. And then after the airplane business, I sold that in 1980, and I'd always been a sailor, but I decided to go ahead and get a sea captain's license. So I got a 100-ton sea captain's license so that I can sail boats up to 100 tons. And
sound like a little kid, I'm so impressed.
I started sailing big boats.
Really?
I sailed for a German owner for a couple of years who was just a wonderful
So
guy.
You've seen the conditions of the oceans that you write about.
Mm-hmm. And there's nothing more magical than being 600 or 800 miles out off the coast and having a whale come up right next to your sailboat.
Wow.
It is magical.
And hopefully you'll be writing about this for your grandchildren.
Absolutely. No.
We're gonna conclude in just a minute or so. What are the names of your grandchildren?
Riley is my grandson. He's my only son.
Okay.
And I have Alice and Annie and Dylan.
Incredible. You look too young to be a grandfather.
Well, thank you very much. No, I started young.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been talking to a dear old friend of mine, and now he's a wonderful children's author. He is Patric Boles. He is the author of The Legend of Eben and Heidi Lou Dolphin. Mr. Boles, tell the people in 15, 20 seconds where they can buy this book.
Well, come to buy the book first on the website, please, which is dolphinlegend.com. A percentage of all of the monies from the sales on the website goes to Marine Mammal Conservancy. You can also buy the book through Amazon and through Barnes & Noble and through all of the big booksellers and stuff by order at this time. They will be available in, I think, 4 or 5 more days for Amazon and by the end of the month for Barnes & Noble.
And we'll try to get it in the Atlanta Fulton Public Library. Good luck.
Thank you.
Happy holidays, and I'm so happy for you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it, James.
Okay.
Absolutely. Always great to see you.
Thank you.